Hey everyone, Andy here from Drive Steady, and in today's video I'm going to be reviewing a BMW M2 Competition. Now BMW came out with the M2 in 2016, but in 2019 they refreshed it and changed the name to M2 Competition. Now in my research I read many raved reviews about this car, but one statement stood out to me, and that is this is the closest thing you can get to an E46 M3 in the new BMW M lineups. Now, being an E46 M3 owner myself, I'm going to put that claim to the test. In addition to that, I'll show you around the M2 Competition, show you what's new, and overall give you my opinion of it. So without further ado, let's get started. The BMW M logo is a badge of the ultimate driving machine, a car that is associated with the term driver's car and oozes a coolness that others don't have. Now many say BMW have lost that image in recent years and that they're more associated with the mainstream badge flaunting I don't care how it drives audience. Enter the M2. The first generation was released in 2016 and was the successor to the wildly popular BMW M. No doubt the M2 had some very large shoes to fill, but BMW got the philosophy right and it was a hit. Like all M cars, it was time for a refresh, but BMW didn't take the M2 and give it the typical LCI treatment and a cool new name like Competition. The M2 got a new engine. The same one from the M4. This engine is called the S55. Woo! And unlike the one it's replacing, this one has two turbos instead of one. And obviously, that means more horsepower and more torque. The M2 Competition has 405 horsepower and 406 foot-pounds of torque. That represents an increase of 40 horsepower and 37 foot-pounds of torque over the pre-refresh model. Other changes in the engine bay include a carbon fiber piece directly from the M3 and the M4. Speaking of the M4, this car has the cooling system lifted directly from the M4 Competition package car. And what that means is all of these things work together, and in a 6-speed manual car you get 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds. If you opt for this 7-speed double clutch transmission, that drops to 4 seconds flat. So the M2 Competition in this sunset orange paint is not only fast, but it's also a stunning car to look at. Everything from the wide fender flares to the new wheels, this M2 Competition has all the right proportions. Interestingly, it's quite similar in size when compared to the E46 M3. The two are separated by 0.2 of an inch in length, less than an inch in height, and exactly an inch in the wheelbase. The only big differences is in the width, where the M2 is 3 inches wider. They also practically weigh the same too. Now let's look at the M2 Competition from an exterior perspective and look at some of the things that have changed as a part of the refresh. Number one, let's start off with these mirrors here. These are very similar to the ones you see in the M3 CS. They've got the traditional M look and they're very cool looking. One of the complaints the original M2 had was it didn't have real M mirrors, whatever that meant. But now you get these M mirrors and the aerodynamic shape that allows you to slither air around the car. Next you come to the headlights, which are these hexagonal shaped adaptive LEDs, and these are also new for the refresh. These look absolutely amazing in my opinion. Next, let's move on to these black kidney grills. They're a little bit bigger. They're stretched out a little bit when you compare it to the original M2, and I think these look really nice, set off by the M2 badge here. And then let's come down even further. to the front fascia here, and specifically this front bumper. Remember I mentioned that this M2 has the cooling from the M4 Competition. Now, the M2, the original one from prior to the refresh, had some overheating issues. And to fix that, they gave it this M4 Competition cooling package, and they've redone this front area here that allow more air through, and they've got some additional intercoolers and radiators to cool the car down to prevent that overheating issue the original M2 was having. All right, the next exterior change in the M2 Competition are these wheels. And man, do they look really good. They're forged 19 by 9 in the front, 19 by 10 in the rear, wrapped around a Michelin Pilot Sport tire, 235/35 in the front, 265/35 in the rear. Inside the wheelbarrow, you have massive, absolutely massive brakes, 15.7 inches in the front with a 6-piston caliper. In the rear, 15 inches with a 4-piston caliper. That bigger number in the rear, 15 inches, is something you rarely see. Companies usually put the big tire, the big brakes in the front, and the smaller brakes in the rear. Now, one other thing to note about these brakes are the calipers. All of you know that BMW offers a carbon ceramic brake. This one is a steel brake, but those calipers are the same size as you would get in the carbon ceramic brake option. All right, now we're on the rear of the M2 Competition, and let's talk exterior differences out back. They're not many, they're very subtle, but they're still there. Revised taillights. This is common for BMW to do. They take the front headlights and the rear taillights and they refresh them, they make them look newer. They're the same shape, but a little different nonetheless. Then you come over to the badge. This is one of the bigger differences back here. Obviously it says M2, and right underneath it, it says Competition. This is a difference. It's very subtle. You can't really tell when you're looking at it from a distance. You got to get up really close to see that Competition lettering underneath, but it's now there as opposed to before just saying M2. Then moving on down into the exhaust, this M2 Competition is fitted with a black chrome-ish tip exhaust. It sounds really good. It has baffles in it. When you switch it from Comfort to Sport Plus, it gets a little louder, a little bit throatier, and it does sound really, really good for a forced induction engine. Now, the one thing I'm gonna ding BMW here for is the exhaust overhang. And BMW has been doing this ever since the E92 M3 and the E90 M3, and it continues here with this M2 Competition. It just looks so out of place, especially when you've got black tips on a silver muffler. It just looks so terrible in my opinion, but for some reason BMW continues to do that. Nonetheless, the overall rear of the M2 looks pretty good and the exhaust sounds pretty good, so I guess we can give the exhaust overhang a little bit of a pass. All right, so now we're on the inside of the BMW M2, and let's talk about some of the differences or just an overall opinion of this M2 interior. Starting off with the door here, you've got this leather and sway and leather and carbon fiber mix on the door. It's a pretty nicely designed door. I like the carbon fiber weave. It's not like a high gloss weave, but it's typical of what you see in the M3 and the M4, so it looks really good. I like the orange stitching pretty much all around this car. The seats, which I'll get to in a minute here, also have the orange stitching. This door is really nicely put together, very simple, but still nicely put together. Now let's move to the seats. One of the complaints many M2 owners had were the seats in the original one weren't very M-ish. They weren't very sporty. But in the 2019 model, you get these new bucket style seats. They've got lumbar support, they've got side bolstering, they're very grippy, for the lack of a better term. Even when the side bolsters are deflated to the lowest setting, they hold you in place really well. And they've got a really cool design actually. The stitching continues, as I mentioned, like on the door, but you've got one cool thing here. This M2 logo illuminates, it lights up at night, and it looks very, very cool. And in addition to that, the design overall on the seat, they've got like these little perforations. I'm not sure exactly why they did this, because this car doesn't have cooled seats, but nonetheless, it's just a cool looking design in my opinion. Next, let's move on to the steering wheel. And BMWs are well known for making nice looking steering wheels. I personally like them a lot, and this M2 is no different. The M models get a little bit beefier wheels, and this one again has a nice steering wheel. You've got paddle shifters which have a nice feel. They're very clever, BMW. The backs are metal, but the front is plastic. A little bit of price cutting there. In addition to that, let's talk about the steering wheel. You've also got these M logo cross stitch pattern here that weaves the leather onto the wheel. Separately, you've got M1 and M2 buttons that allow you to configure the steering and the response of the M2. And then separately, you've got all of the typical voice controls, accepting, rejecting a call, raising, lowering volume. Let's move a little bit further. The start stop button on the M2 is very cool. It's red. I like that a lot. It's very similar to what I have in my Shelby GT350. That's a great touch. The next big difference on the interior of the M2 is you've got these LED or digital gauges, as opposed to in the previous model, they were analog. And interestingly, the M3 and the M4 still have analog gauges, but this M2 gets the digital dash. Nonetheless, it looks very cool during the day, also looks even cooler at night. Of course, you've got the temperature readouts and all the information is there, so it's a very good unit, very clear, very easy to read. Next, let's move on to the overall interior layout. It's very BMW. You've got the navigation screen up here at the top. It's touchscreen, it's responsive. It's not the best. It is showing its age. Of course, BMW is replacing them in the newer model lineups. And then you've got the typical climate controls here. Everything is pretty standard BMW. Moving down to the shifter. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, you can get this in a 6-speed manual or the 7-speed double clutch. The way you operate this is the standard layout. You move it once to the left, that puts you in neutral. To the left and up puts you in reverse, and then back in the default position you swipe it to the right, that puts you in automatic mode, and then swipe it again to the right, that switches you over to manual shifting mode. To the left of that, you got a couple more buttons here. The button starting from the bottom is the park distance control. Pretty typical there, it's self-explanatory by the logo. Then you've got the steering feel. You've got 3 settings there: Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus. And then you've got the engine response, which opens and closes the baffles on the exhaust. I believe it's Efficient, Sport, and Sport Plus there. Then you've got the traction control, and I forgot to mention you've got an empty button in between the steering feel and the engine, which is kind of weird. I wonder why they didn't just put the parking button up there, but nonetheless, that's what it is. And then coming down, you've got this other button here underneath your shifter, which controls the shift speed of the double clutch automatic. Then the final piece is the iDrive controller. This is very typical. It's been in BMWs for a very, very long time. I'm not really going to go into depth about it, but it's pretty much the same. The glove compartment is a fairly decent size. You've got a USB charger in there, and you can fit a pretty decent size phone. I would say a bigger size iPhone or a Galaxy device would fit in here. And now moving to the handbrake, it's a traditional one. Most manufacturers are moving to automatic or electronic handbrakes, but BMW has maintained the manual handbrake here, and it's covered with this really nice looking suede or Alcantara boot with the orange stitching. Now, one of the cooler things about BMW M cars are their dual personality. They've got a sporty design, they drive really well, and in addition to that, you can drive them on a daily basis and they're somewhat comfortable. Now, because of that, let's test out the back seats in the M2 just in case you want to carry somebody around for a short period of time or maybe even a long period of time. So let's open this door here, and they've got a really cool design. It's very Audi-ish. You pull this latch, you do one of these things, and then there's a button here that forwards the seat so it's easier to get into. And this gives me actually a lot of room to be able to get into the back seat. So let's hop in. Here I am. You see me? All right, so immediately in the back seat, let me push this seat back. I can tell you that I am not cramped. I'm 5'10". My hair is touching the ceiling. However, it's not that bad. Unfortunately, I don't have another person to sit next to me, so I can tell you as far as shoulder room and how I fit back here. But leg room is actually pretty good. There are these small indents on the back of the seat that give you maybe another centimeter or so of room. But overall, it's not that bad back here, considering that this is a smaller end two-door car. And to get out, same motion. This button here is actually really convenient, and it allows you to get in and get out very easily. So that's that. You don't have to do any funny movements like you do in other coupes. Push that back, use the button to slide it back. This button, I'm telling you, it's a real savior, and it works really well. And there you go. All right, now the driving portion of the review. And one of the things before getting started I want to talk about is the visibility. I talked about this in my E46 M3 review, and it carries on over here. It's wonderful there in my E46, and it's also great here. Even though I've got this hood, I can see in front of me, obviously, but the visibility out in front of me is absolutely fantastic. I can see everything. I don't have an issue looking over my shoulder. The B pillar is very far back. Even though I don't have blind spot monitoring in this car, I don't feel like I need it because of that B pillar being so far behind. Just a quick over the shoulder look takes care of everything. Same goes for the other side. The mirror is interestingly uniquely shaped. It's not difficult to see out of, but I wish I had a little bit more real estate here. But anyway, that's the visibility. Now let's get rolling and talk about how this thing drives, and maybe I can give you my perspective on how it compares to the E46 M3. All right, immediately, the E46 M3 I have is an SMG car, okay? So this is somewhat of an apples to apples comparison, this being the DCT, and this is just miles and miles better than a SMG or an automatic transmission from back in the days. The one thing I did notice is I feel like the upshifts, they pop and bang and they're all great, but the item here is that I wish they were a little crisper. I don't know if that's the right word, and a little bit faster. When I was driving around a little bit spiritedly here, and I noticed that on the upshifts, it's there. It's not like it's slow, but it's, I don't know, I feel like there's something missing there. So that's the transmission. I do definitely notice when I flip through the modes 1, 2, 3 in the shift speed, that definitely makes a difference. So let's talk about the suspension, because I didn't really mention it in the technical aspect of the review. But basically what you've got here is a fixed suspension. There is no dynamic damper control. You can't make it harder and softer. So you get one setting, and in reality, I don't know if you need anything more than what this car already has. This says it's not too firm to where it's beating you up all the time, and it's not too soft to where you're about to go into a turn here and your body roll is just totally out of control. No, not at all. This suspension is dialed in right, and it actually feels really good. Now, let's move on to a topic where you do have a little bit of adjustability, and that is the steering feel and the throttle response. So in the throttle response and the engine management, you've got efficient, sport, and sport plus. I noticed that you get more pops and bangs from the exhaust when you're in sport plus as opposed to sport. When you do put it in sport, the baffles open up and you get a throatier, much nicer sounding exhaust. I don't know, I think this is just my opinion, obviously, but it's still not an E46 M3 sound. The induction noise is good, and the exhaust noise is pretty good. The red line is 7,400, almost 7,500. But there's just something about the induction noise and the exhaust noise, the rasp. A lot of people don't like the rasp in the E46 M3. I personally do. This car has some rasp, but it's more of that throaty, deep bass kind of, I don't know, I can't describe it. It does sound good, but it's not E46 M3 or naturally aspirated levels of exhaust noise and engagement. So that's the engine management and the exhaust baffles. Now let's talk about the steering. There's 3 modes there. There's Comfort, Sport, and Sport Plus. Comfort is where I found myself the most. It's the most enjoyable. It's not very stiff, like you're not really muscling the steering wheel. It feels very neutral. Sport is, I think, the perfect setting if you want to drive spiritedly. Sport Plus is just way too heavy. It's artificially weighted and it just doesn't feel right. It's just unnecessary amounts of resistance in the steering wheel that I don't know if it really offers a benefit. But if you're the type of person who really likes a tight, stiff steering wheel, Sport Plus is probably something you will really like. Next, let's just talk about, what do I want to talk about now? Let's talk about the seats, since I keep doing this. So as I mentioned in the interior part of the review, the seats do have lumbar, they have side bolstering, and you do get the bucket seats now as a part of the M2 Competition refresh. The seats are really good. They're very comfortable, and the M2 is not the I guess softest riding car. You can see I'm moving around. I've got my camera on a steady mount and it's still bouncing around pretty significantly, actually. Hopefully it's not being a hindrance, but it's the seats do accommodate for a little bit of the stiffness in the chassis and in the suspension, and I don't see a reason as to why you wouldn't be able to daily drive this. And finally, is this the successor to the E46 M3? I think it is. I think it's as close to the E46 as you're gonna get. Even though I haven't driven the M4 yet, from what I hear and how I translate that to my experience with the M2 and the comparison between the M2 and the M4 that I've seen, I think so, yes. I think this is the sole successor, so to speak, of the E46 M3. It's the more refined version of the E46 M3. I don't think you'll be able to build another E46 M3 or an E39 M5. So those cars are just, I don't know, they're just so special and engaging to drive. And I'm not really sure if any manufacturer is going to be able to bring back those nostalgia days of the E46 M3, the C506 Corvette, the E39 M5. Those things are probably not coming back. But like I said, this is the refined 2019-2020 version of an E46 M3. If the technology was available back then, I almost feel like the E46 M3 would be this car, just with the naturally aspirated engine. So those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the M2 Competition. And in addition to that, maybe there's some things that I didn't cover. So put them down in the comments below and I will try to answer them as quickly and as best as possible. But thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.